So this image looked interesting to me, and it just sparked up an idea I had in my head. I always wondered about the heads of some of these ancient Egyptian images. The head of Anubis, the head of Horus, and whatnot. And you know, they always depicted like, oh, that's the god. That's how Anubis looks. The head of a jackal with the body of a man, and Horus is the head of a bird, whatever kind of bird it is, in the body of a man. But I'm not gonna go all into that. Uh, you know, um, the whole God thing. Now I'll go into that some other time about the whole concepts of God in ancient Egyptian time. But I wanted to, because I noticed certain things about this image, and I just was like, just finish running my, my thought experiment, right? My thought process of like what I think I see here. All right, so the first thing is like the idea of like, okay, those are masks. The Anubis mask, the Horus mask, those are masks, because ancient Egyptians, know how to create masks. They know how to create things. So creating a mask is not something they don't know how to do. They know how to make masks. They make masks for burials, for putting a mask up on the face onto a mummy. So So creating masks is not something they don't know how to do. They know how to make masks. They know how to make a headgear. Like crowns and helmets and stuff. So to me, these are masks, right? These are not half man, half animal. These are masks. Now, why are they wearing masks? So my theory is these represent their job position. You know what they do. You know, that's why they're wearing these masks, to signify their job in the pharaoh's court, in the kingdom, right? In the empire. And I was just, theorizing like what those jobs would be. So for me, from what I've seen so far, I have a high belief that the one that's wearing the Anubis mask, that signifies a warrior of the society. That's a warrior class. That means he'll be a guard. So any of the Egyptian, guards for the pharaoh, will be wearing Anubis mask. The army, the pharaoh's army will be wearing pharaoh masks. Or at least the leadership part, or their elite warriors, and everybody else might not wear a mask. But I'm assuming that by average they would be wearing masks, and part of it is probably to, because you'd be thinking like, why would they wear a mask? Why wouldn't they just have like a symbol that they could wear around their neck, like a necklace or something that signifies their job, their rank, right? What they do for a living, their authority. Why cover their face? Why not? Because you can't identify who the person is under the mask, right? Well, maybe that's why. Maybe they don't want you to know who's under the mask, right? They just want you to respect the authorities. Like, you see this. There might be another reason as well. The idea of just the fear tactic of it. You're walking around. You turn to your left or right, and suddenly you see somebody, half look like a half dog, half human, or half bird, half man. It's gonna have an effect on you. Now, if you're used to seeing this, right, it's not that big of a deal. To you, it's normal. But if you're an outsider, if you're not from uh, the Egyptian Empire, you're a visitor, this would scare the shit out of you, right? So that could be part of it, part of the reason for it. And it's just the hiding the identity. There could be reasons for it. It might be for the safety of the family of the one who wears this. Especially if you're wearing the Anubis mask. Like I said, you're essentially law enforcement, military. You're a warrior, right? So that's the position you'll be known for. Anubis is the god of death. So you might be an executioner. Your job might be to literally kill. So yeah, you might have killed somebody. Part of your duties And if somebody if somebody who's related to that person sees you without the mask and be like, "Oh, I know who you are. You killed such and such for such and such, reason. I want revenge." And this could be a way to protect this, this guard's, this person. So that'll be a justification, and that's my idea of like why they would wear a mask, to hide the identity, to protect them and anybody they're related to. And there's other factors for it, like the idea of like, it removes individuality, because like it's the whole uniform thing. It's like, oh, they're all wearing masks, they all look the same. So you just, if they tell you to do something, you just do it. There's no like individuality among them when you see them with a mask on. So you won't be able to single them out. I mean, if they do something like, I don't know, punch you in the face because they felt like it, which, I hope that's not what was going on, right? But if they did, it'd be hard for you to be like, it was that, that one right there. It was specifically that guard that punched me in the face. It'd be hard to when, every guard looks the same, looks almost the same. Similar bodies, similar clothing, same type of mask. So it'd be hard to, to single them out. So I'm not, you get the idea. That might be, a factor. So then I was thinking like, okay, well, if the Anubis is essentially law and, essentially is the warrior class, then I'm like, okay, what does the Horus represent? And like, why would you have a bird? And then I was thinking about the idea of using birds for sending like how we the whole pigeon thing, using pigeons, homing pigeons as they call it, homing pigeons. Well, you wrap messages to their legs and have them fly off, and that's a form of low tech communications. So I was like, okay, you know, we use birds for low tech communications. Why wouldn't the Egyptians have done that? What if they did do that? What if that was the whole thing? They used birds for communications, because it makes you wonder, how did the Egyptians or any ancient humans, how did they communicate? We consider ourselves advanced because we have internet and smartphones and emails and post office and this and that. So this Horus mask wearing person, for me, they're the communications person. You know, they are essentially a glorified mailman, so to speak, right? Delivery man, whatever you want to call it. Like they're responsible for delivering, transporting packages, like maybe sacks of items, messages, among many other things that has to do with, you know, transferring information as well as actual, materialistic things. So they handle logistics. So they handle communications and logistics basically. So when I was going with that concept, I was like, oh, I noticed something else about this image that gives me military vibes. I'm ex-military, by the way, ex ex-army. So I was like, oh, this reminds me of something. They look like they're in a stack formation. They look like they have, uh, specific jobs. The one in the middle looks like a leader because he looks like a pharaoh, right? You got the warrior, right? The one with the Anubis mask. So he's essentially a soldier, right? He's gonna do a lot of the grunt work, right? While the leader that's in the middle, he's gonna do a lot of the leading. He's gonna be giving a lot of the commands. And then you got the communications officer, so to speak, the Horus mask guy. And his job, he's the radio man. He's the one who has to relay messages and information back to higher ups, other forces, like the pharaoh or whoever, because there's a possibility this one in the middle is not a pharaoh, even though he kind of looks like he should be a pharaoh. He's probably just a high position person, so he has royalty or pharaoh like appearance, because the pharaoh probably wears something way more different. So I'll figure that out some other time. But I'm just getting the idea that one in the middle is basically the leadership, the leader of the team, and the fact that they're in a kneeling position, which is a familiar position. Getting down on one knee is something we do in the military. They're in a stack formation. You see, you got them in a specific order. You always try to keep um, your leadership in a more safe position. So the center position is the best position for the leader to be safe, right, and to be able to lead. And right behind them is the communications person, right, the quote unquote radio person. Whenever they have important information, they can relay it to that person, and that person can peel off, right, because they're behind in the back of the formation, and go off and you know uh, relay the information and message, especially if there's multiple teams. This looks like a three-man stack team, as we refer to in the military, and we do this a lot. The three-man teams, four-man teams. We do even bigger teams. Four-man teams, because the whole squad is 8 man, is roughly 8 men. Two team leaders, and the squad is so it's 9 men, because it's two team leaders. Yeah, so it's 9 makes a squad, and then you have two teams. Alpha team, Bravo, Alpha Bravo, two different teams. So you have two team leaders, and then everybody has like a certain task or position, skill state. So I'm looking at this. Not only are they in the kneeling position, like they're they're trying to keep a low profile so that way they can't be spotted by the enemy. They also doing the hand signal that we actually use in the military, which is a fist, and we put a fist up to indicate halt or to stop, and each member of the team does it. The first person is the first person to do it, because they're the first person to see something, and when they see like, oh, we see the enemy, I'm gonna stop, which is we stop, take a knee, especially if we're walking, you see something, you stop, take a knee, do the hand symbol, and everybody else stops, takes a knee, does the hand symbol, because the idea is you're trying to relay that information throughout the whole entire team. So if the person in front of you, gets down on a knee, puts their fist up, you're like, oh shit, I gotta do the same thing. This means we gotta stop. Something's going on. Something's happening in front of us, right? So, like I said, because of my experience in the military, it's like, oh, this looks familiar. So it makes me wonder, is this the case? Then there's the fact that of the mass, it's like, okay, this could represent their job positions, what they're supposed to do. I believe that they actually wore these masks. There's a possibility they didn't, right, wear the mask. Maybe they had a different way of signifying their positions, and this is just a artistic representation of their position in the team, and in the army, military, whatever, right? But it's always interesting. A lot of times I see of these types of depictions, even if I do see something that seems like they're in a battle, a lot of times it looks like they don't even have weapons. So it kind of is interesting. Sometimes it seems like they don't have weapons, but later on I will figure out what their weapons are. I think most of their tools that they use, or a lot of the symbols that you be seeing in the hieroglyphs, might actually be most of their weapons. Most of their, weapon based, their technology, right? Their weapons. But there's a possibility maybe they're just really skilled in hand-to-hand combat. They're very athletic. So they probably take advantage of that, and then of course strength in numbers to fight. So they literally bear arms, right? Their arms are weapons of mass destruction, right? So that's a high possibility that they're just skilled hand-to-hand combat warriors. So that's why you don't see them a lot with weapons, or depicted with weapons. some people might look at this like, well, since we don't see them depicted with weapons, they're not they're not warriors, right? They're not. We're going to assume that they they're doing some type of ritual. They're just this is them during peacetime. This is not them during war or whatnot. But I mean, anything is possible. I'm just seeing something familiar in these images, and I'm just giving my interpretation of what I see. I could be completely wrong, um, and that's understandable because I wasn't there when they were when they existed, right? But it is an interesting idea of the fact that that could be the possibility. Now, me personally, I don't believe that we are more advanced uh, than ancient humans. We are equally as advanced as them, but in a different capacity. Right? The way we, the whole, like, the way we have different. I believe more so because we focus more on electricity for our advancements is why we are a lot different than they are, because I feel that they lean more towards mechanical and um, chemical, right, and structural engineering. They lean towards more of that, and that's another thing I want to point out that I was thinking about, that ancient Egyptians, they definitely knew about chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, uh, um, what was it? Structural engineering, agriculture, and then I threw in electrical engineering because as long as they had access to quartz crystals or any piezoelectric, uh, crystal, they had access to electricity, and they obviously had access to copper and gold and iron and other types of metal. So uh, they had the they had the material to be able to make batteries and anything to anything capable of using electricity. They had access to that. Whether they used it or not, that's up for debate, of course. But the fact that they had the materials, um, it was possible that they could have used it. But I feel one of my beliefs is that they lean towards sun. So technically, they're more solar powered, since they were in the desert and they had access to the sun all the time, and so solar energy. So they lean more towards uh, sun technology, and even sound and wind and stuff like that. You get the idea. They lean more towards that than they did towards electricity. We lean in more towards electricity, but there's a high possibility that they leaned in more into the sun, which is why they have Ra, the sun god. You hear stuff about them having the eye of Ra, and uh, the winged sun disk. So there's a lot of references to suns. If even in this image, if you look very close, you will see some reddish circles in this image, and that is supposed to be the depiction of the sun. So, I mean, from what I can tell, it's largely a depiction of the sun. I've seen some winged sun discs, have that, coloration, and obviously have wings. So to me, that's like, okay, that's the sun. That's a depiction of the sun. So there's a lot going on in the background of this image. A lot of stuff, a lot of information back there that someday I'll decipher it all differently than what is currently been deciphered. What else? I think that's all I have so far. I mean, I could come up with some other theories, but currently, right now, this is a pretty decent theory. I mean, it sounds uh, plausible, right? That's the most important thing, is that even though it might not be likely that this is the case of what this image represents, but in general, or just a theory, but it's possible. It is possible that This is a depiction of um, military personnel's, and that's part of their jobs. The other thing I want to say about the Horus, before I finish this video, the Horus mask is not just like he's. Um, I was thinking like he also probably serves as a spy, a scout, as it were. Their job is to not only be able to do communications, maybe even some logistics, like when it comes to moving materials, um, like supplies, like there'll be like a supply sergeant. Like I feel that a lot of these have different. They have more than one job. That's what I'm trying to say. Like they serve different purposes. Like the Anubis one, not only would this be somebody who would do military related job, but they also will be law enforcement. There might be guards, bodyguards, for the pharaoh and whatnot. There might be uh, guards in, I don't know, like a prison or a dungeon. Maybe even guards for like slaves, if that was a thing. Um, that kind of stuff. So they would handle a lot of the, you know, force based stuff. So they'll do a lot of the law enforcement, military power, all that stuff. While the Horus Mass ones would be doing a lot of the, you know, uh, logistics stuff. Like I said, like the supply stuff. They'll be responsible for making sure um, materials are moved from point A to point B. Communications, making sure information is transferred from point A to point B. And they probably use birds, because if you look in the hieroglyphs, you see a lot of birds up there, a lot of different types of birds. So that could be, an important factor. Something I recently saw was, if you see up here, you'll see these two white cartouches, and they have like stuff in it. And what was an interesting thing is, I saw something like, I think it was a carving or something of something that I call a empty cartouche. And what was interesting is like, oh, that's pretty cool, because the way it looked like is, it looked like rope in a loop, right? In a loop, and then it was tied up. So it's like, okay, that's just rope. So what if the cartouche is a representation of rope? And the stuff in the cartouche is the stuff you're going to wrap around with the rope. Right? Now, an added thing is that this rope depiction that I'm talking about was in the claws of a vulture. And I have this in my last video. I had this whole thing about vultures being used as a care package. Like supply. What was it? I say care package, but like supply drops. You use these vultures because they're big and strong and they can carry heavy things, and be able to go into some place, and you use them to drop off materials. So they will be like drones or carrier pigeons, so to speak, carrier vultures, right? And they will actually carry whatever you give them. So you have to bundle them up, right? Either you tie them to their legs, or you bundle them up, right? You tie the stuff you want all together and give it to these vultures. The vulture will pick them up, carry them, and take them wherever you want. And that was their versions of drones, their version of a delivery service. And then the Horus mass Egyptian, that's probably their job, is to train and tame these birds and have them do these types of tasks. So that's why I'm saying they're like kind of like glorified like mailmans and stuff like that, because they would have to, their job has to do with birds. And you can use birds for a lot of things, like communications, transporting packages, so they're kind of like They're like the original Amazon, right? I'm gonna use that expression. They're the original Amazon. So ancient Egyptians had Amazon. I guess I'll use that in the title. Ancient Egyptians had an Amazon system, and they had a police force, as it were, and of course they had a military force. And that's the another video.